Losing traction on any part of trail, up, down or around corners, can be problematic. Okay, when we're climbing, that loss of traction might just result in the bike stalling rather than having a massive off. It's a real problem in terms of using what little energy we've got available to us, what power we've got available to us, and not wasting any. Every time that back wheel slips on a climb, half a pedal turn of slip, and you've pretty much lost your forward momentum completely. And if you're clipped in, you're going to have to rapidly unclip and dab down, or at best, if you're on flats, put your foot down and try and start again. When your bike's already going uphill, it's quite hard to get going again. So there's a few things we can do to maximise our grip, and it's not all about tyre pressure and tyre choice. A lot more of it's about us in terms of our body position and our delivery of power through the bike, how we drive the bike. It can be tempting to get all alpha male and pumped up when it comes to climb and start stamping our pedals hard and get up and pump the big guns. But as we rise out of the saddle on a gradient, our weight comes forward of centre, and as we push down, we end up getting that wheel spin that causes the problems. No doubt on a long, short, sharp climb with good traction, standing up and blasting, it's an option, but when we've got a longer climb, we probably want to monitor things, keep things a bit more smooth, a bit more rhythmical, and grind our way up the hill more in a steady fashion, making sure that all the power we put in turns into the wheel turning, but that wheel gripping as well. And that would involve keeping our weight on the saddle. As the climb gets more and more steep, we're actually going to move forward on the saddle. In doing so, we're keeping weight down through that back tyre. On the steeper part of a climb, you may end up sitting right on the horn of the saddle, which all for a few of us isn't much fun, but is essential in terms of keeping that grip. We always want to be centred, our weight centred through the centre line of the bike, i.e. the bottom bracket. So when we're going uphill, it may feel like we're bringing ourselves forward. All we're really doing is letting the bike rotate below us, and our mass is still staying through the centre line. So to keep our weight through the centre line, as the front of the bike rises up, we need to come slightly, what it feels like, forward, but again, as I mentioned, you're staying above the centre line of the bike. Keeping that weight on the horn of the saddle is going to keep traction on the back tyre, but the problem of just simply putting our weight too far back onto the back tyre for grip is the front end gets pretty light. This can be made even worse by every time we push down on the bar, on the pedal, we end up pulling up on the bars as well. Equal and opposite forces, so as I drive down, I tend to pull up. You may have climbed up a slope and find your front wheel start to wander. Partly it's your body position, in terms of being rear of centre. As the ground gradient changes below you, you end up being behind the centre line. Secondly, it's going to be that drive of power and that acceleration. As you accelerate hard through the stamp part of the pedal, the front wheel pops up, just like when you're trying to pop a wheelie. But it can also be down to our hand position on the bars. If my wrists are up and forward as I lean forward on the bike, I'm actually contributing to that lift. If I drop my wrists and even perhaps open my fingers, it's very much harder to end up pulling up on the bars as I pedal down. So dropping your wrists and tucking your elbows down slightly means that we're not pulling up on the bar as we pedal, we're just pushing through. We can even push into the bar and drive ourselves onto the horn of the saddle a bit harder. Again, not much fun, but does give us that grip. The other thing we need to think about is that delivery of power. We've looked at it before about how we want the pedals move in a circle. And I can create power even on a flat pedal. If I drop my heel at the top of the cycle, I can push through, push through, push through, and as I get to the bottom, I drop my toe slightly and I can start to pull back on the pedal. So I'm creating power all the way through and to about here, where I switch to heel down and push across the top. So there's a marginal point when I'm not creating power, but don't forget the other foot at that point is. If I just stamp, 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 stamp on this downstroke, I end up with the bike moving short, sharp jolts. The wheel is going to be doing this as I climb, and we're going to lose a lot of traction. So smooth, circular pedal strokes is going to really help when it comes to climbing. Keeping the power delivery even. Think about it in terms of, you know, a fast car with a really powerful engine on board. If you just drop the clutch and smack the revs down, smack the accelerator down, those wheels are going to spin. You're not going to actually accelerate very fast at all. And it's a similar effect. The engine might be smaller, tyres might be more knobbly, and the speed might be lower, but I want everything I can, all the power I can produce, to turn into forward motion and none of it be wasted. Obviously on a nice smooth section of climb, we've got a fairly even grip. But as we go further up the slope here, we can see that we've got more roots and things to cross over. And that's when the wheel's going to lift up to go over them, and as it does so, those nice wet shiny roots are are going to offer less traction, the tyre's going to stick to them less, and that's where I need to be even more careful about the power delivery. So I'm going to make my way up there with a nice smooth pedal, so hopefully smooth pedal action, conserving my energy. When I get to the rooty section, we'll take a look at how we can cope with roots on climbs and keeping traction good there. Gear selection is obviously important. If I'm pushing a high gear as I try and climb a slope, yes, for every rotation of the pedals the rear wheel is going to turn more times, but that extra power required and that drive and that force leads to an uneven pedal stroke, and that power delivery can be wasted. It doesn't transfer into forward motion. So getting my gearing right and spinning a bit more maybe will help to create better traction. The only problem there is if I go into too easy in a gear, my feet are spinning like the Roadrunner, I'm not making any progress forwards. That requires better skills in terms of my slow speed control and balance. So in some respects, getting used to being able to ride your bike balanced very well at slower speeds can be really useful when it comes to grinding out natural techie climbs where the ground might be loose, or there might be routes where the traction is harder to find. To approach the steeper section of the climb, my wrists are dropping, I'm on the horn of the saddle, I'm approaching the roots. I need to get my cadence up and make sure I keep this delivery power smooth, maybe just easing off as the back wheel rises up over each route. So with a fairly smooth pedal stroke and the right gear, right tyre pressure and right body position, we've made it this far without too much bother, without too much lack of traction or loss of traction. Looking up further ahead, we've got some pretty meaty sections of route, some pretty big large stalling effects on the trail that are going to slow the bike down if I'm not careful, but also lift the rear wheel up as I'm trying to deliver power, and that can lead to that loss of traction and that moment when the bike stalls and I stop. A couple of things that can work on here. One is line choice, obviously. If I look ahead, I can pick an easier route. There's no point in making it hard on myself and trying to pick the gnarliest route up there. I just want to get to the top with as minimal effort as possible. Second thing is to, once I've got my route in mind, is to decide where to put the power in and where I'm going to need to accelerate, where I'm going to have to try and gain some momentum so that I can have these moments as the back wheel's lifting up over a route where I'm actually easing off the pedals rather than trying to create extra drive at that point. So I'm going to spin to a certain degree, but I'm going to keep something in my pocket for a little rapid acceleration just as I go up over routes, and then I can ease off as the back wheel's driving over them. Hopefully in that way my wheels won't spin out and I should be able to make it to the top. So even if I find myself the easiest possible line, I'm still going to have to go up over the odd step or route. It's this moment here as the back wheel's lifting up over a route that there's minimal contact with any ground. I've gone from an area of contact of kind of close to a foot to an area of contact of next to nothing, and if I really slam down the pedal there, it's pretty obvious I'm going to lose traction. So the trick would be to drive hard here and ease off as the wheel's lifting up and over, and then get straight back on the juice when the tyre gets to a bit more an area of a longer point of contact and more traction. And in that way, hopefully, I won't get any stalling effect, the bike won't stop, and I'll be able to carry onwards and upwards to a cup of tea at the top of the hill. By this point also I probably want to be in a gear that I can make the rest of the climb. When there's a lot of tension on that chain and I try and change gear on the way up here, there's a moment again when the chain's between sprockets at the back and we're going to lose some drive. We're also risking snapping our chain or a really grinding, wearing effect on our drive chain. At this point also I'm going to be pretty much firmly entrenched on the nose of my saddle, and I'm going to be dropping my wrists and keeping that front wheel down. Any lean back at this point as I power in is going to lose my front wheel, make it very hard to steer, if not flop off the back of the bike.